right, Mr. George, are you ready? So to add fractions with unlike denominators like this one, I like to write it going down. So 1/3 plus 2/5, like this. So you're going to write that. You're going to write it as I'm writing it. And we are going to count up by threes until we get to a number that both 3 and 5 share in common when you're counting up. So I have my number now. It is 15. So I circle it, and then I change this denominator to 15, and I change this denominator to 15. I can't just change a 3 to a 15. So what would I multiply it by, George, to get the 3 to a 15? How
5.
And then what would I multiply this 5 to get it to a 15?
3.
And anything I do to this bottom, I do to the top. So I'm going to multiply this times 5. And anything I do to this bottom, I'm going to do to the top. So this becomes a 5, and this becomes a 6. Does that make sense to you now? Okay. Now we have the same denominator, so we can just add the numerators together. So 5 plus 6 is 11 over 15. And then our last step is just to make sure that it is simplified. Is it already as low as it could go? Yes, there's we cannot simplify it any more than that. Okay, sometimes you're going to see that instead of adding fractions, we're adding mixed numbers, which means this is 2 and 1/3, and this is 1 and 2/5, sorry. So we would do the same exact thing we did here, but our last step would be to add these whole numbers. Have you learned about mixed numbers yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So that is, remember I gave you this one as an example. So you would do the same exact thing, adding 1/8 and 3/4, but then your last step would be to add this 1 and this 2 together.
Okay.
So we would do 1 and 1/8 plus 2 and 3/4. We would find our common denominator, which is 8, right? If you're counting up by 4 and you're counting up by 8, 8 would be the common number that they share. And then you would multiply this by 1, and you would multiply this by 2, and we would get 7/8. And then our last step would be to add this. 1 plus 2 is 3. Make sense? Does that make sense? Or okay. Okay. Now I wanted to show you how to multiply fractions. So it's pretty easy. It's way easier than adding fractions. So you're going to do 3/5 times 3/4. You're going to, number 1, multiply your numerators. So write this down, honey. And then number 2, you're going to multiply your denominators. So 3 times 3 is 9, and then 5 times 4 is 20. And that is it. If it needs to be simplified, you simplify it, but that is the whole process. Pretty easy, right? Way easier than addition. Okay, the last thing that we talked about was adding decimals. So can you get your paper out and tell me how yours looks different than mine when I find the answer? So we're going to first write 5.62, and then we're going to write 0.0285, and then we're going to write 0.3. And then, I don't know if you remember, I think I taught this to you a couple sessions ago. I don't really like the way this looks because it's confusing. So I like to fill in zeros every place that there's a blank so that it's nice and lined up. Do you remember me teaching you about that?
Yeah.
Okay, now I have everything nice and lined up. You can put your lines in there too. 5 plus 0 is 5. 8 plus 0 is 8. 2 plus 2 plus 0 is 4. 6 plus 3 is 9. 5 plus 0 is 5. So you said that you got 5.6485. And I got 5.9485. So I think maybe you forgot to add in this next number. Is that correct?
Mm. Yeah.
Okay. So that is the error that you did. Okay, for subtraction, we can only do 2 numbers at a time, and we always have to put the biggest one on top. And the reason why we have to do 2 at a time is because we can't borrow if we have one number that needs borrowing and the other one doesn't. Does that make sense to you? Just like we would never do 5 minus 2 minus 3. In a row like that. We could do 5 minus 2 is 3, and then we would do 3 minus 3 is 0. So that's the way we're going to handle decimals as well. Okay, 5.62 minus 0.025. Again, we need that 0, so you're going to write this down, honey. And then we're going to do 0 minus 5. I can't do that, so I have to change this to a 10. Then this goes to a 1. And then if I have 1, can I take 2 away? No. So this becomes a 5, and this becomes an 11. If I have 5, can I take 0 away? Yep, I can. And then 5 minus 0 is, I can do that. So now I start in with my math. 10 minus 5 is 5. 11 minus 2 is 9. 5 minus 0 is 5. We put the decimal here. 5 minus 0 is 5. And then I do my second step of subtracting 0.3. And I line up my decimals. And then again, I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to put in all of my zeros so that I stay nice and lined up and I don't make a mistake. 5 minus 0 is 5. 9 minus 0 is 9. 5 minus 3 is 2. 5 minus 0 is 5. Does that make sense to you, honey?
Kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.